I'm joined now by Democratic Congressman Scott Peters of California, who represents the district where the shooting occurred. Congressman Peters, thanks so much for coming on tonight.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start by asking you that very question that's inherent in the rabbi's remarks. What can we do about rising anti-Semitism in this country?
Well, Kasie, I want to start by saying, we talk about this as part of a national trend of rising anti-Semitism, but Poway lost a very important person tonight in Lori Kay, who was a mother, she was a wife, she was a congregant, and she was known as someone who did everything in her power for other people, died actually trying to save the rabbis. So I want to acknowledge the loss. That's what really is hurting the community tonight, and our hearts and prayers are with her and the families of the victims who are recovering, thankfully. What can we do? What can we do? I think you can't argue with the rabbi about the power of love. I think one of the things that's happened over the past few years is that the rhetoric has taken on such an awful tone, American versus American, and this white supremacism really has to be called out. And I think that we ought to treat this, when it's combined with violence, like we do terrorism. This really is terrorism, and if we applied the same energy and applied the same resources and applied the same attention to this issue as if it were terrorism, which it is, as we do with Islamophobia or Islamic extremism, I think this would get a lot more attention, and it deserves a lot more attention, frankly. This can't happen.
Yeah. What is your community doing to try and protect religious institutions in the wake of this? I know there was some action on the part of the Poway Sheriff's Department and others. Why do you think that this happened in the area where you live, and what can you do to try and make sure it doesn't happen again?
Well, I mean, I think this can happen anywhere. You've seen it happen all over the country. I think Poway is a community you would not expect this to happen to. It's one of the safest cities in our region. San Diego County is one of the safest areas in the country. This is someone who is deeply motivated by hatred, by anti-Semitism, by white supremacy. What can we do? First, we need to call it out. Second, we need to cooperate with law enforcement to make sure that when you see something like apparently this gentleman was involved with, posting these things on the internet, that you say something. I'm not sure we can catch everyone, but we ought to empower people to that it's better to be safe than sorry. And then from a policy standpoint, we do have to work on whether people who are mentally ill, like this young man, this disturbed, hateful young man, should have access to. And I think that's one of the issues in Washington right now that's very important for us to deal with.
Can I ask you on that policy question as well? I absolutely take your point on that. But we've also seen some evidence that, hatred, this kind of language, these kind of attitudes spreads like wildfire online. What can we do to fight back against that? What's the role of the Congress? What's the role of the companies to try and make that, less of a place where people can get these ideas?
Well, I think the president needs to speak out against white supremacy. I don't think he's done a good enough job of that. I think those of us in elected office need to do the same thing, whether it's state, local, or federal. I think business leaders increasingly ought to look to them. I think folks in Silicon Valley see a lot of this traffic running through their platforms. We have to have a conversation about what we can do to stop that and to fight back against that. So, yeah, everyone has a role in turning this conversation around. And certainly, I think the rabbi points out that religious institutions and communities have a role too. I mean, we had a very ecumenical service last night at a Presbyterian church with people of all faiths last night as a vigil to honor the people to honor Lori and to the people who were shot. That's the kind of coming together we need throughout the country. We really ought to try to do it ahead of time, though, as much as we can. And just to teach people that, that it's important to love each other and care about each other, that Americans shouldn't be fighting Americans. We should be working together in community to solve our problems and to talk things through.
Yeah. Congressman Scott Peters, thanks so much for being on the program tonight and for honoring Lori.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kasie.